Did you know there's a smarter way to pay for workers' compensation? GTM offers pay-as-you-go workers' comp. So instead of one big upfront premium, you pay based on your actual payroll each period. Better cash flow, fewer surprises. Visit gtm.com/business to learn more. Welcome to Capital Connect, a GTM podcast featuring the business leaders shaping the capital region and making an impact on our future. Conversations about growth, culture, and what it really takes to build something special in our region. And now here's your host, Quito Delgado.
Welcome back to Capital Connect. I am your host, Quito Delgado, Business Sales Manager here at GTM. And today I have the pleasure of connecting with Mark Eagan, President and CEO of not only the Capital Region Chamber of Commerce, but the Center of Economic Growth. Mark, thank you so much for hopping on today and joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So why don't we just get right into it. You become one of the most, and I'm not trying to embarrass you, but it's true, one of the most recognizable business leaders here in the Capital Region. Why don't you tell us your origin story? How did you talk about your career arc, how you got involved with the chamber?
Well, I guess the start of the story is I fell into it like probably a lot of people would. If remnants of my accent still don't give me away, I'm originally from Massachusetts. I grew up sort of between Boston and Providence. And I'm unique in that my first job out of college, a few years ago now, but it was working at a startup chamber that covered my hometown and two other communities. In a short time, I really sort of got bit by the bug, and I saw what could happen when business people came together and worked together, what they could do not only support their business, but the broader community. And then I moved to another larger regional chamber in Massachusetts. And then it was, okay, is this just a job that I like, or is it really maybe my profession and can make it a career? And that was when we actually moved to the Midwest. And I was in South Bend, Indiana for 10 and a half years. I have two adult children, but they were both born there. And then I was recruited to the Capital Region in 2008. So they were kids at that point. They were first and third grade. So my whole career really has been in chamber economic development work. And, you know, I guess I'd say, so people said, well, when I came here, why did you come here? And, you know, it's funny, when we moved to the Midwest, that was truly like a career move. And I thought, well, we're going to go out there because the organization was larger, more complex, and I knew I would learn a lot. Thought, okay, we're going to go there 3 to 5 years. And I actually liked it there a lot. That's why we stayed as long. And believe it or not, there's headhunters that, you know, there's specialties. And there's some that do like what I do for a living. And the chamber retained that firm. They reached out to me. And oftentimes they know what part of the country people are originally from. So they thought, well, maybe we could get him to relocate back to the Northeast. And oftentimes when I get phone calls about other positions, they would be really quick conversations because these cities and regions had been on a slow economic decline for a long period of time. And when I got the call about this opportunity, I knew it was different. I knew that you know, the stability of our market, that we hadn't lost any big companies. From years ago, we had less jobs at GE, but still had a lot of GE jobs. And to go fast, you know, rewind 18 years, that was really when about 10 years before is when there really was a focused effort to diversify the economy, grow private sector jobs, you know, show that we're more than state government. That's when we used to use the moniker often about Tech Valley. And I said, you know, I think this community's heyday could be yet to come. And wouldn't it be cool to help be part of it? And it's hard to believe it's 18 years later.
Well, on behalf of GTM, the Capital Region, we're glad you came.
Well, thank you.
We're glad you came. So you mentioned you were recruited to the Capital Region. And I wasn't thinking about asking this question, but make the recruiting pitch, right? To, you know, why should somebody, whether maybe you're a recent college grad who went away to school, now make the pitch for them to come back home, or maybe they're from another area, they came to school here, and now it's like, hey, stay here, don't go away, or you're already a professional in another state, and maybe you want to make a change make the case for the capital region.
Sure. Yeah, I can make it from that side, and then maybe even quickly make it from a company side and why they might bring investment here. For a young professional, one of the things that I think, we have a young professionals network as part of our organization. One of the things we do every year is go on to some of our college campuses, because that's a strength that our region has. Not many other regions have as many colleges and universities that we do. But I often say that sometimes those students, their only experience is going to the mall or to a pub, and they don't really know what's here. So how do we create like a stickiness for them to realize they could stay here, and they can just have a job but build a life? And oftentimes I'll talk about whether it's the piece about, we're large enough, we have all these amenities, or also small enough where you can actually know people, get connections. Like you made a comment, if I was leading a Chamber Economic Development Organization in a city of 1 million people in a region of 8 million people, we would just be a little blip. But in a market our size, you do know people, you can get engaged, make a difference. So talk about how do you make a difference, how to build a life. And then also, oftentimes when young people don't choose here, they might have the desire to say, well, I want to live in New York City, I want to live in Boston. We hear that a lot. And then I'll just say to them, I don't blame you. And but have you ever looked and said, after your paycheck and after you pay your rent, are you going to be able to do anything? You're actually going to be able to enjoy life. You can do that here. And then on the other side, for the person who might be in their 30s or whatever, let's use, I made the comment about GE before. I remember years ago, GE telling me, sometimes when they're trying to recruit new talent or get someone to move here, they said, what we found was people oftentimes had no impression of our community. It wasn't a negative one, but they said, oh, we want you to move to Albany or to, Schenectady or the capital region. They might agree to do it because they knew they sort of had to within the company culture. But once they got people to move here, they didn't want to get transferred somewhere else. And I think we see that time and time again. The other piece I'll just switch to quickly, just because I had this conversation the other day. So CEG, the Center for Economic Growth, so that we're the regional economic development organization for 8 counties. We do our work in partnership with county and local economic development organizations. So in the 8 counties, so in Saratoga County, where we're sitting today, our partner organization is SEDC, Saratoga Economic Development Corp. I did a video for them a couple days ago when we were talking about, and the target audience were manufacturers. Why would you bring your manufacturing business here? And I spent most of my time talking about, for us, one, we don't just want you to come. We want you to stay. We want you to grow here. So I talked about all the things that we do once you get here, particularly through CEG, to really support your workforce, whether it's pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeship programs, program we launched called So What's So Cool About Manufacturing. We're going to support you. We want to be your longtime partner. And I think even coming to begin with, SEDC will work with them to say, what land is available? Do you have enough power? Are there local incentives? They'll lead them through the process. A lot of other communities don't do that hand-holding, and again, try to create a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship.
What are some of the programs, initiatives? Because oftentimes when people think about the chamber, for being honest, it's they got cool networking events.
Yep.
And this, I know a lot more, but for our listeners, just kind of walk us through, like, if you are a business here in the capital region, why should they give serious thought to joining the capital region chamber?
I'll say that sometimes people sort of join the chamber to get something from us. So they might be looking for professional development. They might be looking to broaden their business network. They might be getting health insurance. But the lion's share of our members versus join to get something, they're investing to get things done through us. They know as they're focused on their business, we're really focused on the business community, the broader piece. We're really like a watchdog for them. We're looking around the corner, what's next? How do we prepare the region to compete in that space? I will say to people, because again, they might say, well, yeah, you're an organization that's for employers, for-profits, nonprofits, or like you said, they might even think of events. Events is just a tiny piece of what we do.
Oh, I know.
And really the mission of the regional chamber is really about how do we make sure that we have a long-term, vibrant, growing, prosperous community. So oftentimes, a lot of chambers are what we call a member benefits organization. Those services they provide to the businesses, and that's important. But really the mission of the Capital Region Chamber and CEG is, again, that broader piece. So our goal isn't to have successful businesses so we have successful businesses. It's because we realize successful businesses are the foundation of a strong community. The way that most people have access to opportunity or better opportunities because they have access to a job or to a better job. So all the things that we do is, so if you look and say, okay, if our goal is that long-term prosperity, part of our job is to say, what do we think the impediments are to us being there? So oftentimes then what the regional chamber and CEG do is we're like a problem-solving organization. How do we focus? How do we eliminate or minimize those? Again, not only get in the weeds too much, but we had a chamber board meeting this morning, and CEO of your company serves on a board, was there. And almost our entire meeting was focused on housing, because we know there's a housing issue, the supply, the cost, and really try to have these business leaders understand it. Because if we want to compete long-term, we just can't turn our backs to those issues.
So how do you, as, president, CEO, how do you balance the needs of small businesses, large businesses, nonprofits, and then just community leaders at large? How do you go about balancing that?
It's not easy. But
you make it look easy.
Well, we're fortunate to have a strong team. So we have a staff of, 32, 34 people. So we have it where everyone sort of has a little bit of a portfolio responsibility they own. Almost all of our programmatic work, the majority of that is focused on businesses that have 50 or less employees. The supports that they need. And those larger companies realize, again, what their investment in the chamber is those broader issues. It's workforce development, it's government affairs, it's community and economic development. So we do a pretty good job, I think, in balancing it all. And a lot of my job, because again, we have a talented team, they're in the weeds, and then I try to, oftentimes they might talk about what we're doing. And oftentimes I think my job as the leader is to be more the visionary person, saying, what's the why? Why are we doing this work? Where are we trying? And we're never doing it to create a stronger chamber or a stronger CEG. All we are is an instrument for the community. And our chamber has been around for a long time. Like if you trace our roots, we go back to 1819, so more than 200 years ago.
And with that history, mergers have come about.
Yeah,
there's so many questions I want to ask you, so I'm really trying to make you, but a lot of mergers. So talk us to when, obviously the Capital Region Chamber hasn't always been
called that
Capital Region Chamber. So walk us through how you as the leader have helped, bring all these different organizations, the succession planning, like getting everyone to now fit into the new culture. How has that experience been over the years?
Well, it almost, I'll go back to when I interviewed. I remember first the search firm talking about, then when I, flew in and met with volunteer leaders. I'm paraphrasing, but basically what they said was, we call ourselves a region, but oftentimes we're really just a bunch of cities and towns and villages that are next to each other that call ourselves a region. And if we're really going to realize our true potential as a community, we really have to operate like a region. We have to try to take down these silos. So I was hired by the Albany Colony Regional Chamber. And the word regional was in there, and the chamber's board and membership really was regional. But as a community, unfortunately, oftentimes we think very parochial. So because the word Albany and Colony were in it, people thought, well, that's really what they care about. And so what I tried to do was look and say, okay, who else is it within the region who sees that we as communities, we really look at it the right way. We're not competing with each other. If we're doing things together, we can compete collectively against other regions of the country or other regions in the world. So it was really looking and saying, who wants to play with us? And I would never force anybody to. So again, I'll try to do it quickly.
Yeah.
But, the organization that expressed the most interest in really trying to work together, because they could see there was more to be gained than lost, was the Chamber of Schenectady County. We did more and more every year. It got to the point where you would go to their annual dinner, and the people that were at the registration table and behind the scenes and everything, it was people who were on the payroll of the Albany Culinary Regional Chamber. We had it where our leadership program, our young professionals program, all of it, we called it shared initiatives. It really got to the point of saying, how much more could we do if we were one versus just trying to do this behind the scenes? And Chuck Steiner, who was the longtime exec there, he and I liked each other, we trusted each other, respected each other, which is key to building something that could work. And really what our approach then was, we didn't want to simply merge two organizations. We wanted to create a platform that if other like-minded organizations wanted to become part of the structure, they could. So even now legally, the Albany Culinary Regional Chamber, the Chamber of Schenectady County still exists. And they created this umbrella organization called the Capital Region Chamber. Officially that happened in 2015. And then 4 years later in 2019, the Chamber of Southern Saratoga County became part of that structure. And then in 2020, the following year, the pandemic year, the Center for Economic Growth did the same. And really, they again realized we have a true, strong sort of backbone organization for the region. They had a vacancy in their exec position, and they said, we can hire somebody else, but they spend so much of their time focused on, running the organization versus delivering on the mission of the organization. And that's when all of a sudden my role sort of expanded. I became CEO of both entities. We hired a chief economic development officer to help lead some of that portfolio. And I think what we've shown is it maintains the best of both worlds. So, I think you were at one maybe this spring, like in Saratoga County, what we do is we do these events in a local community. We call them Inside. Mm-hmm. We did an Inside Malta, Inside Boston Spa. September, we have an Inside Clifton Park Half Moon. In Schenectady, we have Schenectady Good News Awards in the spring, Business Awards in the fall. In Albany County, we do an event with the mayor of Albany, the town supervisor in Colony. So we've kept that local where it matters, but then all the other really operate as, I think, how we can sort of punch above our weight as businesses in a community is to do it together.
What if your business could offer the kind of benefits only reserved for big corporations and keep it affordable? GTM's Professional Employer Organization, or PEO, bundles payroll, HR, insurance, and benefits all under one roof. It can be a total game changer for growing businesses. Get a complimentary consultation at gtm.com/business to learn more.
So, with, so many 34 employees, culture.
Yep.
Right. That's a buzzword often thrown around. And I know you like highlighting that region, but I think it's important for someone who has been a leader for as long as you have. Talk to us about how you build culture within your staff, right? Because it is mission driven. There's a lot of collaboration that goes into it, selflessness, work ethic. So how do you identify individuals that can fit into your culture, but then once they're in, how do you maintain that high level of, standard that you've been able to do?
It's funny. One of them just relates, as you say, just to a quick conversation I had when I was leaving to drive here, and there's a position we have open right now that certain positions will get strong candidates quickly filled. This position has been a struggle for us. And I basically asked the question, I said, they mentioned about someone they had just done an interview for. And I said, and they said, well, we don't know if they have the skill in this area. And I said, what's their attitude like? And how do you feel like they would add to our environment, to our culture? I said, because if that's the case and they're smart enough, we can teach them the other components. Because you can have someone who's really skilled, but if they don't want to be a team player, again, the essence of who we are as an organization, it's not often that we use the word I. And so that fits important. The other piece that, what I try to do, and I'll say to people, even people who direct reports to me, is I only get in the weeds when I have to. It's not really where I want to be. So really, I feel like, part of my job, whether it's with our internal staff or even our work with civic and business leaders that I work with, is how do we make sure we point out where are we trying to go? Again, going back to what I said about the why, what are we trying to accomplish, and then motivate, inspire them to want to do the work. And then if they want to do the work, it doesn't feel like work. And I don't have to, myself or another supervisor doesn't have to drive them. They feel the reward from it. And I guess the last piece I'd say that I think is unique about working with the Capital Region Chamber and the Center for Economic Growth is really what we're impacting is our community. You can probably imagine over the years I've been doing this, I interface with a lot of business leaders. I've been offered a number of jobs in the private sector. And while certain days those might be enticing, what I have found so rewarding is I'm not just impacting a company, but our work is uniting companies and really impacting, and not just the business community, but, we get involved in getting funding for schools, transportation projects. Our work can have a lasting impact on our community long term. And I think some people that's really a motivator for them. It's a greater good. And also for most people that work for us, there's a ton of variety to their job. I think people appreciate that.
And wow, that's a great answer, by the way. And so many thoughts that I have as you were speaking, but just in the interest of time, what is the, for CEG and the Capital Region Chamber, I'll let you pick one.
Yep.
But in your tenure, what are the, one for each, what's your most, as a group, I know you're not going to say it's all because of me, but what's something that you're super proud of that you guys have been able to accomplish as an organization?
I'll try to go just really quick to touch on a couple, because I think it shows the variety of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
A number of years ago, I want to say it was 2014, 2015, so more than a decade ago, there was a lead story on the Sunday edition of the TU, and it talked about that our region, I'm not going to say it right, but you get the gist of it, that we, as far as the healthy development of young African-American children, that we ranked near the bottom of MSAs in the country. And I remember, I remember getting a text from a board member saying, "Have you seen this article yet?" And said, this is why we've created this true regional organization. Because then it talked about the issue, oftentimes these kids are in urban school districts that don't have supports, and that this isn't a Troy issue. This isn't an Albany issue. This is an urban school district issue of the Capital Region. And what we found was there's a formula that the state's supposed to fund the schools, and they weren't doing it that way for these urban schools. And so I'm going to say quickly that at that point, I remember the numbers, that Schenectady received 56% of the funding they were supposed to get. Albany received 65%, and Troy received 73%. So what that meant was they were overtaxing their citizens to try to help make up the gap, but they weren't taxing them enough to really provide the supports that those young people needed to be successful. For a year and a half, our main legislative priority as a business organization was to get more funding for those schools. It wasn't this thing for the business, because we realized you don't have business in this cocoon and community in this cocoon. We're in it together. And all of those schools are funded much better today. And I think that, those superintendents have come and gone, but I've been here. I know it's because of the advocacy we did on their behalf. This seems like an odd one, but if you're on the Northway and you're headed to the airport in either direction, you remember at one time, if you're headed south, that on the exit, sometimes the traffic was backed up onto the Northway, or the other way coming in, traffic was backed up on Wolf Road trying to get an Albany Shaker to the airport. You notice that doesn't happen anymore because a whole new exit got built. The champion for that project, who got that project funded, was the Capital Region Chamber. So those are big picture. That's not you register for an event, but that's just a couple of examples. And right now we're working on bringing a $40 million manufacturing training center to the region through the Center for Economic Growth.
Wow. I saw that on LinkedIn, actually.
On-ramp, it's called. Yep.
Yes, on-ramp. I mean, that's powerful. I'm glad I asked the question. I'm glad you gave that great answer because, again, people need to understand, like, just really the great work that you and your team and the region does. Nothing just happens, right?
Exactly. You're a graduate of our leadership program. I'll often say to the class at Open Retreat, people think things just happen in the community. They don't. It's people who make it happen. And again, why do we have that program? Is we can't take civic leadership for granted. You already have people like yourself that are strong, but how do we equip you with more skills? How do we show you where our community is doing really well and where are we not doing well? And what can we do to roll up our sleeves, help us build a stronger community?
Yes, I am a graduate of class of 2025, best class ever. I think you have to say that, right? So I will say that. But speaking of opportunities and strengths, right? Obviously, you can't pack in the whole class in a minute soundbite here. But what is the biggest opportunity you think that we have as a region? But then what is the biggest challenge you think that we should be taking on collectively?
If you look at the state, they have the state broken into 10 different regions. We are almost always one of the top performing regions economically. So we have a lot going for us, but there's still a lot of opportunity that are there. So I would say one of the pieces is we have to each be willing to challenge the status quo. The legislature just finished their session and their budget took them a long time this year. And there's certain lists that we're on. In certain places, New York does really well, but there's other places. Let's use the example of taxation, not just for businesses, but as a citizen, we pay some of the highest taxes in the entire country.
Yeah.
And so if we truly want to make New York more competitive, where do we, as not just, we can blame it on lawmakers, but we as citizens, if we think that the solution is always government, it means we're going to have a bloated government, a more expensive government. So I think there's ways that I would say really what the opportunity is, if we can over time lower the cost for people to live in New York, it's going to be easier to attract talent. And it's when people retire, they're not going to be quite as like to flee to go to other states if their dollar can go further here.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. It's a great state, great region, but yeah, I'm like, man, my taxes, jeez, like I don't live in a mansion.
Right. And then, in our regulations, I could go on.
Yeah.
But
regulations,
right,
especially for business owners.
Right.
I mean, on one hand, it's good for us here at GTM. Because
you help them manage it.
Because we help them
manage it.
But, all joking aside, like regulation here in the state,
right,
could be addressed.
So we do, as you probably know, we do a lot of work on sort of the public policy issues. We have a full-time government affairs person on our staff. He's a registered lobbyist. I'm a registered lobbyist. We have a firm under retainer because we know the actions of government, whether it's at the local level, the state level, certain issues on the federal level, can really impact our ability for our dreams to come true. So at times that we're on the offense and times that we're on the defense on these issues.
Kind of want to circle back to the challenges of employers. I'm going to have two questions. You speak to a number of leaders here in the Capital Region, access to a lot of them. Just mentioned you're on the board member with some of the most prominent leaders here in the region that serve on your board. What is a trait that you find a lot of leaders tend to possess?
I think they can see the big picture. They don't really and that's what they stay focused on, because there's always reasons something can't happen. But there's, are you a person who tries to say yes? Many people who are, listening, some will know the name Carp Brazil, who ran CDTA for a long time. Carm was a real professional and a personal friend of mine. And when he retired only about a year and a half ago, and there were only a handful of people in his retirement video, and I was honored to be one of the people asked to be in it. And I had said that one of the things is Carm's approach, because whether it was me or other elected officials or folks that come and say, well, what about this? What about this? His answer was almost always either yes or let's see if we can figure it out. So I think a real leader tries to figure it out. And they realize they don't have to have all the answers. You know, I don't know if you were able to be at the Capital Region Business Hall of Fame induction ceremony this year. 3 people were inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is a joint initiative of the Junior Achievement and CG. And one of the honorees in his video, he said, if I'm the dumbest person in the room, I've done something right. In other words, you want to surround yourself with really smart people. So a leader doesn't have to have all the answers, but know where they can go to get them, and how do we, encourage people to row together in that direction.
And just speaking of leadership, Capital Region, and also Carm, obviously we recently lost Carm. Condolences, to his family. But one of my favorite days of leadership was he came in and he just, chopped it up with us for an hour or so, and he just brought straight gas the whole time. So
exactly, and he was somebody who truly believed in regionalism, and of course, by the very nature, CDTA was connecting our communities. And I think that anytime that any of us have the opportunity where, like, say, an issue arises, does it just affect your company? Does it just affect your zip code? If it affects a broader community, how do you bring people together? Leadership is bringing people together.
And now, again, the second part of that question I want to ask is, based off of your conversations, without, obviously giving away anything confidential, but what are some of the challenges that are keeping our leaders of the Capital Region up at night, when it comes to anything, but particularly the workforce?
Well, I was going to say, that's really, if I talk to anybody, whether they have, 12 employees or 1,200 employees, usually their biggest issue is finding people. It's how do they find people? How do they develop them? How do they retain them? And so a good chunk of our work is tied to workforce. I think I mentioned earlier, we have training programs, but we also have pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship programs. We do talent attraction programs. This summer, we have a thing where we call it the Summer Internship Engagement Program. Any area companies who have summer interns, whether it's a couple or a couple hundred, we do 5 different events during the summer, not only connect those interns with each other, but connect them to the community. Because what we found out last year is 55% of those who participated, they didn't go to school here and they don't live here. They came here for the summer to do that internship at that company. So there's lots of things that we're doing to try to help that talent pipeline, but that's really the biggest long-term issue that companies have. And because of the demographics, the number of people are going to retire over the next 5 years, the number of people are going to enter, it's probably only become more challenging.
I'm going to get you out of here on a few questions, and then just want to first and foremost, again, thank you for your time. But most importantly, just thank you for the leadership and the contributions you continue to make here in the area.
It's my honor. It really is.
I can tell for sure. 5 years from now, what's something that we're gonna look back on and say, wow, like, okay, it'll be really cool if we accomplished this as the chamber, or if we're able to bring something, like, what's kind of like, you can wave a magic wand 5 years from now, like X happened and you had a hand in helping that happen. What would that be?
I guess the crystal ball would be a little foggy, because, just like you think back to all of a sudden when COVID hit, you don't know what's going to happen. But I think as an organization, when I talked about looking around the corner, we have to be sort of nimble enough to adjust to that, what that is. But I guess I would go back to saying that, a couple of the components. So we have a strategic plan. We have one plan that guides both organizations. And the underlying sort of foundational element of those plans, what we sort of touched on was regionalism. That local issues matter, but local issues matter in context of the region, because that's the only way we're going to compete. for talent and for companies to be here. So I hope that I'm going to be able to point to examples where our communities are working more together, and don't view that neighboring community as a competitor for that business, but how we're truly stronger together. It sounds like a slogan, but it's if that can be part of our DNA, I will be really proud of that. I think what we've done, again, in taking what were 4 separate organizations to now be under one umbrella, that's a significant accomplishment. But how do we take that and leverage it? The last piece I would say is, I mentioned strategic plan, I mentioned our board. Our board will spend a half a day on October 1st as getting their input as we actually craft our next plan. And our strategic plan is 5 years, which for a company would seem like a long period of time. But again, for us, really what we're about is our plan isn't about the chamber and CEG. It's about advancing the economic and social well-being of our community. And, I remember being at a conference years ago with some of my peers across the country, and the speaker said, because you have a really unique job because you influence every day with no authority. Like if I take my phone, almost any elected official, I have this cell here. I have the cell to, whether it's Joe's Garage or CEO of a lot of our companies. And so I have entree to them, but they don't have to listen to me. But if it goes back to the issue about what's leadership, is see where you're trying to go. Here's a problem. Here's a potential solution. Do you have a different one? And how do we get there together? So we will identify over the next 5 years what are some of those big impediments? How do we use our collective capacity to make a difference? And again, why 5 years? Because it takes longer, because we're trying to get all these folks to work together, and they're not on my payroll, so they don't have to listen to me.
On that, where can people, I'm sure most people know how to connect with you, but how can everyone connect with the Chamber of Commerce? Shout out the socials, the website, and of course, if they want to connect with you, I'm assuming LinkedIn.
Yes. So the Chamber's website, our website addresses are very simple. Chamber is capitalregionchamber.com, and the Center for Economic Growth is ceg.org. And if you go to the Chamber website, there's an About button. On there, you're going to be able to see that says our team. It's going to show both our staff as well as our volunteer leaders. All of our direct lines are there. Our email is there. You can find us, both organizations, on social media channels. You can, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to wrap it up with this as customary. And I know, this is going to be tough for you because I know you have a lot to choose from. But if you had to pick one guest that we should have next on the show with the one caveat, you have to connect me to them to get them on, who would that individual be and why?
I didn't know that was a question. I didn't know any of your questions. You were smart. He doesn't give any questions ahead of time.
Nope.
For a while there, the TU did this. It was like once a month, they would do a Q&A with somebody in the community. And one of the questions they would ask them was, if you could be someone else in the community for a day, who would you want it to be?
Oh.
And that was always a question. So one day I said to myself, who would I want to be? And there's lots of people, different days, I might say different things. But I remember that day who I thought. And then I let him know afterwards. And actually, when I let him know, he teared up when I told him I want to be you. I don't know if you know the name Chet Alpelka or not. But Chet, Albany Molecular Research, AMRI, it's now Curia. He was one of the founders of that company. Obviously did very well. So he could have just taken that wealth and moved somewhere. Still lives in our community. He is very involved in helping the startup community and arts and culture. Not only he'll help them and do mentorship, but he'll write checks. So he's somebody who, again, very successful, very bright, but didn't just choose to move away and say, okay, now I'm going to be retired and just sort of be on vacation. Every day he's engaged in the community. I was at an event last night that was a fundraiser for an arts organization in Troy. Who did I walk in and see? And he wears a button all the time on his jacket that says collaborate. So I'll connect you with Chet because he, I think, can help connect a lot of dots. And he very much believes in all of our communities are good, but we're great when we're together.
And on that note, Mark, this has been a pleasure. I could probably keep you here another hour, but I know you got a lot of places to be and people to meet with. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us. And until next time, we'll check you out. But appreciate you, Mark.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Imagine managing payroll, onboarding, time tracking, benefits administration, and more, all in one place, accessed from any device. GTM's cloud-based human capital management platform makes it possible, saving you time and helping your team thrive. Get a complimentary quote and schedule a demo today at gtm.com/business. That's a wrap on this edition of Capital Connect. Thanks for listening and for supporting the businesses and leaders that make the Capital Region such a great place to work and thrive. Support for Capital Connect comes from GTM Payroll and HR, helping businesses streamline their operations with leading workforce solutions technology and local dedicated support so you can get back to what you do best. Learn more about payroll, HR, and insurance solutions at gtm.com/business. We release new episodes every week, so subscribe to the podcast to catch our next episode. We'll see you next time.